What if everything you've ever believed about giving, why we do it, how much matters, even whether it truly makes a difference, was only part of the story? What if generosity wasn't just a good deed or a moral obligation, but something far more powerful, something written into the fabric of who you are, not just behavior but identity, not just action but purpose? What if understanding that truth could change not only how you give, but how you live? Think for a moment about the last time you gave something, your time, your energy, maybe even your money. Did it feel like a sacrifice, or did it feel bigger than that? Like something inside you stirred. You were meant to do it. Maybe you didn't expect anything in return, and yet somehow you felt richer afterward. Fuller, more alive. That's not a coincidence. That's design. Because long before giving became a hashtag, a tax deduction, or a guilt-driven checkmark on someone's spiritual checklist, it was a divine act. It was woven into the very nature of creation. God didn't just speak the world into being. He gave life freely, without hesitation. And when He created humanity, He made us in His image. Which means deep down, beneath all the noise and distractions, there's a giver inside every one of us. A desire not just to receive, but to release, to bless, to impact. But somewhere along the way, many of us lost that connection. We started seeing giving as something we should do, rather than something we're designed to do. We began measuring generosity by numbers instead of meaning, by what we lose rather than what we gain. Not financially, but spiritually, emotionally, deeply. And maybe that's why so many people struggle with the idea of charitable giving today. They don't see the point. They don't feel the joy. They give because they think they have to, not because they know they get to. But here's the truth. When you give from the right place, something shifts. You stop living for yourself and start living for something greater. You begin to see your resources not as things to protect, but tools to transform lives, including your own. This isn't about religion. It's not about rules or rituals. This is about understanding a foundation that has stood for thousands of years, a biblical truth that reshapes how we see ourselves, our blessings, and the people around us. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, you'll discover something life-changing. Giving isn't just about helping others, it's about healing yourself. It's about unlocking a deeper sense of purpose. It's about stepping into the fullness of who you were made to be. So ask yourself, are you ready to understand the real reason why generosity matters? Are you ready to shift your mindset and see giving not as a burden, but as a blessing? Because once you grasp the biblical foundation behind it, you'll never look at charity the same way again. You won't just give because you should. You'll give because you finally understand why you want to. From the very beginning, generosity wasn't a suggestion. It was a pattern, a rhythm embedded into the core of creation itself. God didn't just give life to the world and walk away. He gave light, sky, land, and seas. He gave breath to humanity. He gave purpose, meaning, and freedom. And when He placed Adam and Eve in the garden, He didn't hand them survival. He handed them abundance. The trees were fruitful. The resources were endless. They weren't just given to live. They were given to thrive. But more than that, they were given the ability to give. Because even in paradise, before sin, before shame, there was still an invitation to return something. Not out of lack, but out of love. The act of giving was never about filling a void in God. It was about aligning the human heart with divine generosity. That's why Cain and Abel brought offerings. Not because they had to, but because they were made in the image of a giver. And what they offered revealed what was in their hearts. Abel gave from the firstborn of his flock. Not leftovers, not what he could spare, but the best of what he had. His offering reflected trust, reverence, a willingness to release what he valued most. He gave from the fruit of the ground, perhaps not with the same spirit. The difference wasn't in the gift itself, but in the posture behind it. One gave with gratitude, the other gave out of habit. One saw giving as sacred, the other saw it as routine. And this is where we begin to see a truth that echoes through every generation. Giving reveals who you really are. It's not just about what you do with your money or possessions. It's about what those things reveal about your beliefs, your values, and your understanding of purpose. Because if you look at the earliest stories of humanity, giving was always tied to destiny. Abraham understood this better than most. When he returned from battle victorious, he gave a tithe, a tenth of everything. Not because he was forced, not because it was law, but because he recognized the source of his blessing. He gave freely because he knew he had been given to. That's the foundation. That's the rhythm. That's the divine design. Giving doesn't start with obligation. It starts with recognition. You can't truly give until you realize that everything you have has already been given to you. And once you understand that, your perspective changes. Your hands loosen. Your heart opens. What once felt like sacrifice begins to feel like celebration. You weren't meant to hold on to everything for yourself. You were meant to be a channel, a conduit, a vessel through which blessings flow, not just to you, but through you. This isn't theory. This is history. This is truth. This is how humanity was built to operate. So ask yourself, do you see giving as something you have to do, or do you see it as something you get to do? Because if you're holding back, if you're hesitating, if you're measuring every gift like it's a loss rather than an investment, then maybe you've forgotten the origin of generosity. Maybe you've lost sight of the pattern set from the very beginning. God gives. You were made in His image, so you were made to give. And when you embrace that truth, something shifts. You stop living in fear of what you might lose and start living with faith in what you will gain, not just for others, but for yourself. Because every time you give, you align your heart with something greater. Every time you release, you receive. Not always in kind, not always in timing, but always in purpose. This is the rhythm of life, the divine cycle of blessing. And it all started long before laws were written, long before temples were built, long before tithes were counted. It started in the garden. Fields. In the tents of ancient people who understood that true wealth wasn't measured by what they kept, but by what they gave. So now the question is yours to answer. Will you continue seeing giving as a burden, or will you begin to see it as a birthright? Will you cling to what you have, or will you step into the legacy of generosity that was written into your soul from the very beginning? Because the moment you choose to give, not out of pressure but out of purpose, you enter into something far greater than yourself. You become part of a story that began long before you and will continue long after you're gone, and that story is still unfolding, still inviting, still waiting for you to take your place in it. You were made to give, not because you have too much, not because someone else has too little, but because at your core, in the deepest part of who you are, there is a longing to be part of something greater than yourself. And nothing awakens that longing like generosity. Look at the life of Jesus, not just as a teacher or a miracle worker, but as the ultimate example of what it means to give with no limits, no hesitation, and no fear. He didn't come into this world holding on to heaven. He gave it up. He stepped out of glory and into flesh, out of eternity and into time, out of comfort and into suffering. That's not just sacrifice, that's radical generosity. He didn't wait for people to deserve His love. He didn't measure out grace based on performance. He gave freely, lavishly, without condition. And every act of giving He performed had one powerful effect. It changed lives forever. When He fed the hungry, He wasn't just filling stomachs. He was restoring dignity. When He healed the sick, He wasn't just removing pain, He was declaring value. When He touched the untouchables, He wasn't breaking rules. He was redefining compassion. Jesus didn't just talk about giving. He lived it. And in doing so, He showed us that generosity isn't just about money. It's about presence. It's about courage. It's about seeing someone else's need and responding with more than words, with action. That's why when a poor widow gave 2 small coins into the temple treasury, Jesus didn't look at the amount. He looked at the heart behind it. Others gave from their abundance. She gave from her poverty. And yet, He said she gave more than all the rest. Why? Because she gave everything. Her gift wasn't impressive by human standards, but it was powerful. It was complete. It was an offering of trust, of surrender, of belief that even the smallest act of generosity matters when it comes from the right place. This is the call we all face, not to give until it hurts, but to give until it heals. Because every time you choose generosity over greed, faith over fear, and release over retention, you align yourself with something eternal. You step into the rhythm of Christ-like giving. And that kind of giving doesn't drain you, It fills you, it brings clarity, it brings purpose, it brings freedom. Because the truth is, the more you hold on to, the heavier your heart becomes. The more you give, the lighter you feel. Not because you've lost something, but because you found something far greater, meaning. Jesus knew this. That's why he said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive," not as a rule to follow, but as a reality to experience. This isn't religious talk, it's spiritual law. And it works because it's built into the way we were created. You see, when you give generously, something happens inside you. Your perspective changes, your priorities shift. You stop seeing your blessings as something to protect and start seeing them as something to share. And in that shift, you begin to understand what true abundance really is. It's not about how much you have. It's about how much you're willing to let go of. Because every gift you offer, whether it's time, energy, or resources, is a declaration of faith. A statement that says, I believe in something bigger than myself. That says, I'm not here just to take, I'm here to give. And when you live like that, something incredible begins to happen. You start attracting more than just gratitude. You attract joy. You attract peace. You attract purpose. Because the heart of a giver is never empty. It's always full, not because it holds everything, but because it releases everything with intention. So ask yourself, are you living like someone who gives because they have to? Or are you living like someone who gives because they get to? Are you clinging to control? Or are you stepping into faith? Because the moment you decide to give like Jesus gave, fully, freely, radically, you'll discover that the greatest joy in life doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from giving what you have. And when you do, you won't just change someone else's life. You'll change your own. There's something deeply wired into the human spirit that makes generosity feel good, not just emotionally, but physically. It's not just a moral idea or a spiritual principle. It's science. Research shows that when you give, your brain lights up in ways that nothing else can replicate. The same parts of your mind that activate when you fall in love, when you eat your favorite meal, or when you experience deep joy. They fire off when you give. Your brain releases dopamine, the chemical responsible for pleasure and motivation. It gives you that subtle high, that inner glow, that sense that you've done something meaningful. But it doesn't stop there. Your body also produces oxytocin, often called the love hormone. It builds trust, strengthens relationships, and creates a sense of connection. So when you give, you're not just helping someone else. You're rewiring your own heart to be more compassionate, more open, more alive. This isn't coincidence. This is design. You were made to give, not because the world needs your money, but because your soul needs the transformation that comes with giving. Every time you choose generosity, you're activating a divine mechanism within yourself. You're stepping into alignment with who you truly are. Think about the last time you gave without expecting anything in return. Not out of obligation, not because someone pressured you, not because you wanted recognition, just because you saw a need and you responded. How did it make you feel? Maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but that feeling wasn't just satisfaction. It was purpose. It was meaning. It was the quiet voice inside you saying, yes, this is what life is meant to be. Because here's the truth. Giving doesn't just help others. It heals you. It fills you. It reminds you that you are not alone in this world, that you are part of something bigger than yourself, and that even the smallest act of kindness ripples far beyond what your eyes can see. That's why people who give regularly report higher levels of happiness, lower stress, and greater life satisfaction. Studies show that those who donate time or money consistently rate their quality of life higher than those who don't. Generosity reduces depression, increases self-worth, and builds stronger communities. But it's not just about the numbers, it's about the shift that happens inside you. When you give, you break free from the trap of scarcity. You stop seeing life as limited. You begin to believe in abundance, in possibility, in the idea that your resources aren't just for you, they're for others. And the more you release, the more you receive, not always in material form, but in peace, joy, and fulfillment. You start to understand that giving is not a loss, it's an investment in others, an investment in your own growth, an investment in the kind of life that matters. And when you give with the right heart, not out of pressure, not for applause, but simply because you care, something shifts in the way you see the world. You become more aware of needs around you, more sensitive to pain, more willing to step in where others step back. Because now you know, every gift counts, every action matters, every moment of generosity leaves a mark. So ask yourself, are you holding back because you fear what you might lose? Or are you ready to embrace what you will gain? Because when you give, you don't just change someone else's story, you change your own. You awaken something inside yourself that only generosity can unlock. A deeper sense of purpose, a stronger connection to others, a clearer understanding of your place in this world. And if you've ever wondered whether your actions matter, let this truth settle deep in your heart. They do. Every time you give, you plant a seed. One that may grow in ways you'll never see. One that may bloom long after you've walked away. But it grows because nothing given in love is ever wasted. So don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait until you have more. Don't wait until you feel secure enough. Because security doesn't come from what you hold on to. It comes from what you're willing to release. Give with faith. Give with courage. Give with the full belief that your generosity is not just changing lives today, it's shaping eternity. And that, more than anything, is worth believing in. There is a promise hidden in every act of generosity, one that goes beyond what your eyes can see or your hands can measure. It's not always immediate. It doesn't always come in the form you expect, but it comes. Because giving is not just an action, it's a law of life, a spiritual rhythm that cannot be broken. You give, you release, and then, in time, you receive. Not because you earned it, not because you deserved it, but because you opened the door for something greater to flow into your life. Jesus said, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap." This isn't a magical formula or a prosperity gospel pitch. It's a divine truth, a reality built into the very fabric of existence. When you give with a sincere heart, you activate a force far beyond yourself. You align with a power that moves in unseen ways, shaping your future in ways you may never fully understand. Because generosity unlocks blessings that cannot be accessed any other way. Think about the last time you gave without keeping track, without expecting anything in return. Maybe it was a word of encouragement, a helping hand, a financial gift. Simply listening when someone needed to be heard. At the time, you may not have thought much of it. But later, sometimes days, weeks, even years later, something shifted in your life. An opportunity appeared, a burden lifted, a door opened that had been closed for too long. And somehow, in some way, you knew it was connected. That's the law of sowing and reaping at work. Not a transactional exchange, but a transformational process. Every seed of generosity you plant carries within it the potential for a harvest far greater than what was given. And while you may never see the full impact in this lifetime, trust this, nothing given in love is ever wasted. Your gifts are not just changing lives today, they're building a legacy that will outlive you. But here's the deeper truth. Giving doesn't just open doors for blessings, it breaks chains that hold you back. The more you release, the lighter you become. The more you give, the freer you feel. Because generosity is one of the most powerful weapons against fear, scarcity, and self-centeredness. It teaches you to trust, to believe, to live beyond the limits of your own understanding. When you give, you declare that you are not ruled by lack, that you are not controlled by fear, that you are not defined by what you keep, but by what you're willing to let go of. And that kind of faith changes everything. It changes how you see the world. It changes how you respond to challenges. It changes the way you walk through life, no longer hoarding, but releasing, no longer fearing, but trusting, no longer living for yourself, but for something far greater. Because here's what happens when you start giving consistently. From the right place, you begin to notice a shift. You start attracting opportunities. You meet people who inspire you. You find yourself in places you never expected to be. Doors open that had been locked tight. Circumstances change in ways that make no logical sense. Except for one thing, you gave. And in doing so, you activated a law that cannot be denied. You don't need to understand how it works. You only need to believe that it does. So ask yourself, what are you holding on to that's holding you back? What are you afraid to release? What gift, what resource, what moment of kindness has been weighing on your heart, waiting for you to take the step? Because every time you give, you break a chain of fear, a chain of doubt, a chain of limitation. And in its place, you invite something new, something better, something far beyond what you could ask or imagine. This is not about money. It's about mindset. It's about faith. It's about stepping into a life where you stop living for survival and start living for significance. Where you stop asking, what if I don't have enough? And start believing, I have more than enough to give. Because when you live like that, when you choose generosity over greed, faith over fear, and release over retention, you enter into a cycle of blessing that never ends. You give, you receive, you grow, and then you give again. Because now you know, the greatest life is not the one you protect, it's the one you pour out. And every time you do, the world becomes a little brighter. Your heart becomes a little fuller, and your purpose becomes a little clearer. So don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Just start. Give with courage. Give with faith. Give with the belief that every gift you offer is a seed planted in eternity. And trust that the harvest is already on its way. You were never meant to live a life that only revolves around yourself. Every heartbeat within you is connected to something greater, to purpose, to people, to possibility. And the moment you realize that your resources, your time, your energy, even your smallest act of kindness can change someone's world forever, everything shifts. Because now you know giving isn't just about charity, it's about legacy, it's about impact. It's about stepping into the fullness of who you were created to be. You don't need permission to give. You don't need recognition. You don't need to wait until you have more or feel ready. All you need is a willing heart and an open hand. Because generosity doesn't start with abundance, it starts with intention. And when you choose to give from that place, you step into a power far beyond what money can buy. You begin to shape lives. You begin to heal wounds. You begin to build something eternal. Someone out there is waiting on your gift, not because they're watching for it, but because their life depends on it. Maybe they don't even know it yet. But you do. And now that you do, you can't go back to living small. Because the truth is, the greatest version of yourself was never meant to stay hidden behind fear, hesitation, or self-preservation. That version of you steps forward when you choose faith over doubt, release over control, and generosity over greed. And every time you give, you become more like the person you were made to be. So ask yourself, are you holding on to what you have because you're afraid of losing it? Or are you ready to let go and discover what it means to truly live? Are you going to keep playing it safe? Or are you going to take a risk for something bigger than yourself? Because here's what happens when you decide to give not out of obligation, but out of conviction. When you give not because you have to, but because you finally understand why you want to. You start to see the world differently. Notice the needs you used to overlook. You hear the cries you used to ignore. You feel the pull in your spirit that says, this is where you belong. And in that moment, you realize that giving isn't just about helping others. It's about finding yourself. It's about discovering joy in places you didn't expect, about building connections that last, about walking through life with a sense of meaning that no amount of money can ever replace. That's the reward of generosity. Not just what you give, but what it does to your soul. Because the more you pour out, the more you become filled. The more you release, the more you receive. And the more you give, the more you understand that your life was never meant to be contained. It was meant to overflow. So don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait until you feel completely secure. Don't wait until the fear goes away. Because it never fully does. Just give anyway. Give with courage. Give with faith. Give with the belief that your generosity matters more than you will ever know. Because someone's hope is riding on your hand. Someone's future is depending on your choice. Someone's healing is waiting on your action. And maybe, just maybe, your own healing is waiting on it too. This is your invitation to stop living for what you can keep and start living for what you can give. To stop measuring success by what you accumulate and start measuring it by how much you release. To stop asking, what if I don't have enough? And start believing I have more than enough to share, because the world needs people who give freely, who give boldly, who give without counting the cost. And that person, that giver, is you. So rise up, Step forward. Take action. Start today. Give with everything you've got. Live with purpose. Make a difference. Because the greatest life is not the one you protect. It's the one you give away.